Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cowan. This is a presentation on lipidomics in gaming disorders for my General Biochemistry 2 class at Mississippi State University in the spring semester of 2022. And this is a review of this paper called Lipidomic Profiles Disturbed by the Internet Gaming Disorder in Young Korean Males. This paper was published in March of 2019 by the Journal of Chromatography. So what is internet gaming disorder? Well, internet gaming disorder, or as the paper refers to it by this acronym IGD, is characterized by uncontrollable and persistent playing of internet games despite the occurrence of negative consequences. And individuals with this disorder prioritize gaming over other daily activities, and this results in significant impairment in personal, family, social, and educational areas. So these are people who develop this sort of addictive behavior to video games, and it leads them to neglect all other facets of their life, such as hygiene or any social interaction or education. They tend to fail in their grades and have poor hygiene and poor social lives. So this gaming disorder is usually seen in men, and it usually begins during adolescence. And this is because of that protracted development of the prefrontal cortex compared to the limbic system during the teenage years, and that results in increased vulnerability to addictive behaviors. And we see this a lot with alcohol addiction, smoking addiction, and video game addiction. All are more likely to begin during the teenage years or during adolescence. However, it could be more of the other way around, and that abnormal obsessive gaming habit might actually be what's interfering with the development process and perpetuate that protracted development of the prefrontal cortex. So these addictive gaming habits may have the ability to stunt development even further. So this internet gaming disorder still doesn't have any sort of explicit biomarker. The World Health Organization has included this internet gaming disorder in their new version of the International Classification of Diseases. I believe that's the 11th edition. But currently, diagnosis of this disorder is mostly focused on behavior. There's no sort of biological diagnostic component yet. Well, why is that important? Well, more information about biochemical linkages or molecular indicators associated with IGD could help with medical treatment. So I found this neat little graphic from the FDA about biomarker categories, and it kind of shows why biomarkers are really important for things like this. They help with diagnostics and response, but they also help with monitoring people who may be at risk for developing these sort of diseases and deciding who those people are, who is susceptible for this. So the researchers behind this article, when they decided to start looking for biomarkers for this internet gaming disorder, decided to really focus in on lipids. And this is because lipids are crucial controllers of brain function. Lipids have been found to be significantly affected in a number of neuropsychiatric disorders, and these are things such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or as we most commonly know it, ADHD, and also things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, or MDD, or any sort of addictive disorders like we talked about earlier. And since this internet gaming disorder is very clearly a sort of addictive behavior, it made sense to look into things that are already seen to be associated with addictive disorders. This study analyzed a broad range of phospholipids from the blood samples of study participants and found a significant level of disturbance in the lipid metabolism of individuals diagnosed with IGD, or internet gaming disorder. So who are the study participants? Well, 89 subjects participated in this study. They were all males 19 to 29 years old. Of those 89 subjects, 61 of them had IGD, and then there were also 28 healthy controls. Researchers used the Internet Addiction Test to group study participants into the IGD group or the control group. Subjects who scored higher than a score of 50 on the Internet Addiction Test and who claimed that gaming was their primary use of internet were included in the IGD group, and that diagnosis was also confirmed with a psychiatric evaluation. And then subjects who scored less than 50 on the Internet Addiction Test and who also reported less than 2 hours per day playing video games were included in the control group. And here's some more information about the deviation between those two groups. So the group with the internet addiction disorder seem to have more childhood ADHD symptoms and anxiety and other addictive behaviors such as alcohol use and just impulsiveness in general. So the researchers took these people and they did blood sampling because they ran tests on these people's blood. So they asked the subjects to fast for 6 hours before having their blood drawn. So my first question in this presentation is how could the results of the study been affected if the participants were not asked to fast? You may want to pause the video and think about it and write down your answer. Then later, lipids were extracted from the blood plasma using the Fulch method, and they were analyzed using mass spectrometry. Well, a total of 121 lipids were analyzed, and of those, 19 were differentially regulated between healthy controls and the IGD group. And then 15 of those 19 lipids were present at significantly higher levels in the IGD group. Lysopcs and lysopes showed the highest levels of increased contents. Meanwhile, PCs, PSSs, and lysopcs were the lipids with the significant downregulation, so there were less of those in the IGD group than there were in the healthy controls. And then here's this chart with all the specific data and numbers if you are interested in that. But now we're going to talk a little bit about the specific classes of lipids that were seen to have significantly increased concentrations in the people with the internet gaming disorder and see exactly what that means. First, we have lysophosphatidylcholine, or as the paper likes to shorten it, lysopcs. Lysophosphatidylcholines are produced within cells mainly by the enzyme phospholipase A2, which comes along and removes one of the fatty acid groups from the phosphatidylcholine to produce these lysopcs. These molecules have previously been implicated in numerous processes including cellular growth. And they have also been reported in the association with inflammatory processes in neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. Significant elevation in lysopcs has been reported in major depressive disorder, which may cause hyperactivity of pro-inflammatory cytokine interleukin. And here's some of their data about the concentrations of LPCs in people with this internet gaming disorder versus the healthy controls. So you can see that there's definitely like two distinct groups there. And then there are also lysophosphatidic acids, or lysopase. And these are synthesized when an enzyme called lysophospholipase D removes a choline group from an LPC to produce this lysoPA. These lipids are associated with the permeability of the blood-brain barrier under physiological or pathological conditions. And then finally, they also saw an increase in these fatty acid esters of hydroxyfatty acids, or FAHFAs. These are lipokines that are formed in adipose tissue. These have been shown to improve glucose tolerance, and they also reduce adipose tissue inflammation. These are a sort of new area of interest, so research about FAHFAs is only at the outset. So there's definitely a lot more that can be learned about them. In conclusion, this study was one of the first to examine a biochemical component of the effect of video game addiction. This study's findings imply that there is a cumulative long-term effect of pathologic gaming on the brain development of young adults. So I'll leave you with this question. This is our question number 2. The authors of this paper